This is VOCM Open Line. Call 709-273-5211 or 1-888-590-8626. The views and opinions of this program are not necessarily those of this station. The biggest conversation in Newfoundland and Labrador starts now. Here's VOCM Open Line host Paddy Daly.
Well, all right, and good morning to you. Thank you so much for tuning into the program. It's Friday, July the 4th. This is Open Line. I'm your host, Paddy Daly. David Williams, he's produced the program. It's the Come On With It edition. So, if you're in the St. John's metro region, the number to dial to get in the queue and on the air, 709-273-5211. Elsewhere, toll-free long distance, 1-888-590-VOCM, which is 8626. So 249 years ago today, the leaders of the Continental Congress of the 13 American colonies voted to adopt the Declaration of Independence to break free from the King of England, form their own country. Happy birthday to the United States of America. Many of our American friends listened to the program this morning. Hopefully you have a great 4th of July. It is hard to watch what's going on in that country, but happy 4th to our American buddies. And how about those Blue Jays? I can't get over it. So it's not that long ago, they were struggling mightily. Now in the lead in the American League East, 4-game sweep of the Yankees, the first time in Yankee franchise history. They got swept in 4 games in Toronto, even though the Jays have done that to the Yankees in Yankee Stadium twice prior. But here we go. Anyway, we punch above our weight in a bunch of sports. Softball, for one, fast pitch, and certainly in the world of ball hockey. So apparently there's 7 members of Team Canada participating at the U20 Female Ball Hockey World Championships in Slovakia. 7 of the girls are from here. Molly Gill, Brooklyn Kitchen, Haley Ryan, Cassie Drover, Rachel Hardy, Julia Butler, Abby Fleet. Last I saw, they were 2-0 at the World, so good luck, congratulations, go get them. All right, the first pro athlete to have their number retired. Do you know who it is, Dave? Lou Gehrig. His number 4 hanging at Yankee Stadium. Well, I guess in the plaque, then I think they call it the Hall of Champions or the Hall of Honor or something out in the outfield. So it was on this date, 1939, that Gehrig had his number retired. It was the day where he offered that "I'm the luckiest man" speech. About 61,000 people in the ballpark, eerily silent until he was done, and then the tears were wiped away, and here comes Babe Ruth to hug his on-again and off-again buddy Lou Gehrig, but on this day, 1939. Okay. So I guess we can close the books for now on Andrew Furey's political career. Yesterday he resigned as the member for Humber-Grossmore. There's a few things. We can talk about Furey's time in office. People say as soon as he got his pension, he walked away. He didn't get a pension. No, he didn't qualify. You have to be elected twice, serve 5 years. Premier Furey only served 4.5 years. So what the political future looks for Andrew Furey in the future, I have no earthly idea. Now from the world of political theatre, he's back into the operating theatre. So we'll see what the future holds. But of course, a lot of what people will lean on is whether or not you think it's a good thing or a bad thing is the Upper Churchill Memorandum of Understanding. You know, we can talk about the Health Accord and the Education Accord, but that UC MOU is a big, big deal. Over the course of the summer, apparently the federal government is going to decide, based on Bill C-5, which has made it through Parliament, made it through the Senate, royal assent, and it was twofold. It was removing federal barriers for internal trade, internal provincial trade, and it's also about these projects to be fast-tracked that are in the nation's best interest. All right. So there is some vague reference to oil and gas off our shores, but there is specific reference to the Upper Churchill and the potential for Gull and the 2 transmission projects. You know, I'll throw it back out there. I don't know how many people continue to think about this, but I do, because it's a huge, big deal. With the potential change in the process or the approach to this Upper Churchill expansion and the possibility for Gull and all the transmission work that has to be done, do we not have to include the potential for federal involvement here and what that means for the numbers that have been displayed inside the Memorandum of Understanding? Add to it, if an east-west energy corridor is part of the federal government's play into the future, how do we not consider that when we look at this potential for revenues generated at the Upper Churchill and at Gull, and of course jobs created, federal government money, because that does change things. If the feds get directly involved, how we don't factor that into where we are, you might think it's the best deal of all time. You might think it's the worst deal of all time. But to not consider all the various mitigating factors regarding revenue and profit for us in Hydro-Quebec and the province of Quebec and our provincial government, I don't know how we don't consider these things into the future, but if you want to take it on, we can do it. I also see yet another story about energy in this province, and it's the, for now, stalled wind, hydrogen, ammonia place. So there's only one company we know has been given the green light, World Energy GH2. There's 3 others in the midst of their environmental assessment. But now there's some references to if these companies decide to pivot. Pivot was a word that we abused during the pandemic, but what does that even mean? So with World Energy, they sort of floated out there very casually about data centers, artificial intelligence and all the power required to drive those servers. But we were also told at the beginning, so those are some of the stories about the unpaid royalties, and there's a variety of reasons why the companies say they have not paid the royalties. But this whole concept of pivot, it was already bringing major consternation to many people in the province, certainly those living close by where these plays were being announced, and the 4,000 square kilometres of Crown land in reserve for these 6 companies that are currently still on the books. But a pivot, does that not mean that we go back to the drawing board? Because the Crown land lease was very specific. It was about these wind turbines for the hydrogen ammonia play. So if we're talking about maybe some of these companies now, respond to a tender package put out by Newfoundland Labrador Hydro looking for different sources of power, but does that not require some reconsideration by the provincial government? Because again, the Crown land lease was purpose specific. Now, does it matter to the government that a wind turbine be erected for the hydrogen play? And there's still some people in some parts of the province, some parts of the world, are still bullish and optimistic on these plays, even though none of the companies have secured a power purchase agreement. World Energy is clear. They said unless they're able to establish a 10-year minimum power purchase agreement with, let's just say, the Germans in this case, then they will not proceed. The world of MOUs, there's so many of them floating around. The MOU with the Port of Amsterdam, the MOU with the Port of Rotterdam, the MOU with Germany regarding green hydrogen, but yet nothing has happened, and the federal government has even downplayed their forecast of the value. I'm not saying it's never going to come to pass, because it probably will. But at this moment in time, they seem to be stalled, but we're still talking about a pivot. So if you want to tell us about what you see where you live, based on these 6 proponents, please do indeed bring it forward, because they're not around here, so I don't see it. On that front, we're still waiting to see if there's going to be any action or applications to establish offshore wind. It comes with a variety of concerns, especially when we talk about the fishery. Someone sent me an article or tagged me in an article on Facebook yesterday, and this one is about Norway. So we all know that tidal power is a thing. To capture the strength of the ocean to generate electricity. But in Norway, what they've actually done is they've put these turbines not above the water, but under the water to capture the currents and generate electricity there. They call them sea spinners. What I was a bit confused about, and for the person who tagged me, please let me know what this actually means. So they say Norway built underwater wind turbines that harness power from ocean currents without disturbing marine life. But it's still a turbine that's spinning, so it might have less of an impact on marine life than if it was above the ocean surface. But how does it not disturb marine life if it's under and turbines are spinning where the marine life are living? Anyway, so that's what they're doing there. I thought it was curious, so I brought it up. All right, stick with water. So for the folks on Bell Island, they're rejoicing in the fact that the some $7 million that's been invested, 10% share borne by Wabana, the rest by the provincial and federal government, to extend their new wells, pumps, filters and pipes. And now the water testing says that the Canadian drinking water guidelines have been met. Not for the entire island, but they've dealt with the issue regarding manganese and iron and arsenic. So the boil order advisory has been lifted. It was in place for some 25 years. When you stand back and think about it, we've had conversations on the show, like yesterday, talked about the water quality or the lack thereof in St. Bride's. We've talked about the issues in New West Valley. We've talked now this morning about Bell Island. We've been talking about Torbay. And if you look back at some of the most recent reports regarding boil order advisories, there's some 181 of them in this province. 181. Now, I don't know if that's, there's 276 incorporated municipalities, and then however many local service districts. But in 2025, in modern-day Canada, and 181 boil order advisories still in place, and rejoicing the fact that you can turn on the tap and actually get some clean drinking water, as opposed to the sludge that's been coming out of some of these taps, including for the folks on Bell Island. So it's not a sexy conversation, but I guess, for instance, I live in the east end of town. I take it for granted. I turn on the tap, it's fresh, crisp, clear, healthy, clean drinking water. But so many communities around the province simply don't have that luxury, which is, it's amazing that we'll call drinking water a luxury here in Canada, but there you go. All right, stick with the water. So some 5 months ago that the MSC Baltic 3 ran aground. There has been some work now done for the cleanup. They reported, tar balls that have washed up on the shore. But it looks like, based on the reports I saw this morning, from a senior officer with the Marine Environmental Hazards Section of the Canadian Coast Guard, the cleanup effort is underway, but it's still going to take months before the vessel is removed from the area. So it took forever for there to be a response in the first place, which is a distinct failing of the people in the area. Talking about the potential environmental disaster if something had to go wrong with the Baltic 3. But once again, looking for your participation in the show to tell us what you see on those shores, whether or not the tar balls that had been reported are no longer apparent, or anything else that you'd like to offer on that front. Please do it here on the show. All right, we talk about environmental disaster, which could be a health disaster. This is an interesting story. So Quality of Care Newfoundland and Labrador is now beginning a 10-year what they call deep dive to better understand the healthcare needs of children right across the province. So the study is going to follow 40,000 children born between the 1st of January of 2013 and December 31st, 2022 for the next decade. So if you're born in that time frame, you're automatically enrolled to the study. The health and birth data does not include any identifying information, so privacy concerns will be addressed. But here's some of the issues here. In this province, we have the highest rate of children and youth with complex health needs in Canada, about 1.5 children for every 1,000. We have seen a report from the Citizens Representative, Bradley Moss, talking about what that means to the families with children with complex needs, whether it be the emotional toll, the physical toll, the financial toll. But to follow this along, and it's not just about physical health, obviously, it's also about mental health. You've all seen the numbers, and we've done a pretty good job as a society in recent years to talk about it openly and honestly in some mature fashion. We do see the numbers regarding mental health, mental well-being, or mental illness concerns amongst Canadian youth. So this is probably a very worthwhile undertaking. Dave, I think we should reach out. Dr. Leanne Allwood-Newhook. I know Dr. Newhook. Maybe she can make some time for the program to give us a better understanding of how this is going to work and exactly how the data will be applied. So information is power. The more we know, the better prepared we can be, which I think speaks to a variety of things that we see right in front of us, whether it be with the aging demographic and numbers of people that are going to need home care or long-term care, and or the numbers regarding dementia. So information is power. So this is probably a very worthwhile study that they're going to conduct over the next decade. The partners, of course, the provincial government, the Janeway Children's Hospital, and the Max Bell Foundation, and apparently there's some other partners involved as well. So there you go. Sticking with health, and this is a completely bizarre story. I don't know how this happens, but apparently some 20,000 pieces of mail sent to patients and various suppliers to NL Health Services ended up unclaimed in community mailboxes for over a year and now have been returned to the provincial government. So the few things there. They talk about whether or not it's had an impact on patient health or patient care. How could it not? I mean, there must have been something of some import inside these pieces of 20,000 articles of mail that were sent out to patients and suppliers. But get a load of this. NL Health Services sends 2.5 million pieces of mail per year. That sounds like a lot to me. If you get like medical imaging appointment, which I had recently, I got a phone call reminder. Right? Eastern Health, it was a robotic call, but I got a call to remind me. Is there not a way for us to do a little smarter and better and more cost efficient than sending out 2.5 million pieces of mail? You know, not everybody has a cell phone, but most do. Not everyone has an email address, but most do. Like if I'm getting a hairdo, I get a text message from the salon telling me that my appointment is coming. And so that's that helpful reminder because we have busy lives. But how could this not have had any impact on any patient care? If 20,000 pieces of mail were unopened, uncollected for over a year in community mailboxes, which also begs other questions, not only about reminders coming from the health department, but it's also people didn't check their mail for over a year, right? People were gone cracked off the head when they stopped doing door-to-door delivery for so much of Canada, including my door, which does not get mail delivered. I go to the community mailbox, not very often, maybe once a week, but certainly more frequently than once a year. Anyway, we should be able to do better in this modern day. If you're going to capture all my health information and digitize it, if I can get an application called My Health NL to get my results of an MRI or an X-ray or a blood test or what have you, maybe, just maybe, there's a way to reduce the amount of mail sent out to remind people of their appointments. What do you think? All right. A couple of quickies before we get to you. So there's a case in the courts now with a joint submission by the Crown and the defense regarding what people refer to as the gun guy. This is after the largest seizure of illegal firearms in the province's history. All right, his name is Scott Waterman. All right, he's charged with some 140 charges. All right, so all kinds of weapons and 3D printers and bulletproof vests and brass knuckles and silencers and all the rest of them. So the joint submission is for a 7-year sentence. What I would focus in on here is he's had a previous conviction too, smuggling tasers into Canada from the United States, gun trafficking in the past as well. Is that whole world of ghost guns? We have not caught up with the technology once again. Technology moves at breakneck pace. Governments, not so much. It's apparently really easy to do. You can download the software, you can buy a 3D printer for not huge money, and you can make a gun in your basement. They're untraceable. We don't know who has them. We don't know where they come from. Very much unlike traditional firearms that in your mind's eye you can picture. But what is government going to have to do to catch up with this ghost gun business? Do we separate it out like we do with other things regarding, say, for instance, drugs? There's different schedules for different drugs, carrying with different prison sentences when convicted. But 7 years with all of those weapons, which also adds to a conversation, if you're so inclined, regarding what looks to be a deeply flawed gun buyback program federally. We don't know how it's going to work. We don't know how much money it's going to cost. We don't have any real idea how it's going to impact public safety, as opposed to what we do know is, according to the Chief of Police Association, is the vast majority of guns, specifically handguns, that end up in the hands of criminals come from the United States. So to not crack down there as the first order of business seems to be a bit disconnected to me. Yes, we have to do more and understand the ghost gun world. And yes, we have to deal with people like this guy with all the weapons that he was providing to, you would think, the criminal element. But are we doing enough at the border? I would think the answer to that one is no. But we want to talk about crime from any angle. Let's do it. All right. Good morning to our friends out in Alberta. So the irony is not lost on me that here we go in the throes of this 51st state nonsense. Premier Smith and the Alberta government is tabling legislation today that can further the talk regarding separation. Polls have increased, and you can take the polls as you see fit, but there's somewhere in and around 30% of Albertans are inclined to further the conversation about separation. We know that the Alberta government has already reduced the number of signatures and increased the time frame to gather said signatures to force a potential referendum on separation, which is a terrible idea to begin with. But to table that legislation today, boy, oh boy, that is really quite something. Add to it, we do know there's going to be a by-election for Mr. Poilievre to get an opportunity to get back into Parliament, and it's out in Battle River Crowfoot. And the by-election's on the 18th of August. So it's the second highest Conservative percentage vote of any riding in the country. There's just one Saskatchewan that had delivered more. 83% of the voters in Battle River Crowfoot voted for the Conservative candidate, Damien Carrick, who, I don't know, I mean, he said he stepped down to allow Mr. Poilievre to run in a very safe Conservative seat. I wonder what the handshake or wink and nod might have looked like for Mr. Carrick. But I bring it up specifically because as a leader of a federal party, you know, very much unlike the Bloc Québécois, who are only there for the interests of one province and one province alone, of course, the province of Quebec. As the leader of the Conservative Party of Canada, very much a national party, to be voted into a riding, look, he's going to win that seat, to be representing a riding, and he's a Calgarian in the past, but he hasn't been living in Alberta for a couple of decades, to represent a national party in the throes or in the absolute smack dab centre of separation country in Alberta. How's he going to navigate that? I mean, it's tricky stuff. One of the Separatist Party leaders has talked about the fact that, you know, Mr. Poilievre, just like the Liberals, is pandering to Ontario and Quebec. They bring up issues regarding equalisation, which I think is important. We're actually in court fighting the federal government on the equalisation formula. But then it's also a reference of Mr. Poilievre is too mean to Donald Trump. The self-awareness or lack thereof is really something. How we doing, Dave? We got any calls rolling in? Okay, great. I haven't seen the phone lines. Maybe my screen's not working. All right, we're on Twitter. We're VOCM Open Line. Follow us there. Email address is openline@vocm.com. Oh, I wanted to throw this out there on behalf of Marie. Happy 51st anniversary to Lindsay and Lynette Rowe at Chanscove. They're celebrating tomorrow on the 5th of July. Greetings from Marie, your friends and your family, and from those of us here at Open Line. All right, we gave out the Twitter and email address. Let's take a break. When we come back, let's have a great show. That means you're in the queue to talk about what? Whatever's on your mind. Don't go away. Welcome back to the show. On behalf of a listener via email, wants me to ask anyone who knows where the Capelin are rolling. Anywhere between St. John's, Holyrood, Babels. So, do you know? I think they were all in Middle Cove Beach last week. I actually saw some video of it. They were down there by the thousands. So, anyone want to tell us where the Capelin are rolling? We can pass it along to the listener. All right, let's begin this morning on line number 2. Good morning, Tina. You're on the air.
Good morning, Paddy.
Good morning.
I want to speak a bit about the article that came out yesterday about comments of a top official at Her Majesty's Penitentiary.
I think you're talking about Dan Chafe, who's actually the superintendent of prisons. So all of the prisons.
He was.
Yep.
In 2016, I reported Mr. Dan Chafe's unprofessional behaviour while I was working at the office of the High Sheriff. And when he was announced Superintendent of Prisons, it kind of triggered me because I knew they couldn't have put a worse person in a position of power like that because, you know, while I do not, and I want to make this clear, I do not support any criminal activity or violence, you know, anything that's going to hurt a person. But it's just ironic, or, I mean, I don't know what word to use, that now a judge, this many years later, has to make a comment in a court case of how this person should have known better than to make that comment on a report. Now, my point today, Colin, is I don't know if this will open up a lawsuit because this person is now saying they have PTSD because of Mr. Chafe's unprofessional comments on that report, and it's a court document now.
But, I mean, isn't the concern of the lawyer, Miss Breen, and her client, Mr. Waterman, is that the conditions inside the walls of the penitentiary, the behavior by correction staff, as opposed to someone giving him a flippant nickname?
Well, if you're the top official of HMP, shouldn't you be setting an example of by how you're naming people, and, you know, your words sometimes can just, as this case, it can send a message of how unprofessional you are dealing with things. That's my concern. I reported him in 2016, and it went right over the Newfoundland and Labrador Justice Department's heads. They didn't care. I will tell you what happened. I was off for a period of sick leave. I have a chronic health condition, and when I came back, I was targeted as an employee. I'll say it what it is, whatever. I have been open about it for a while. Mr. Chafe presented to call me at my desk. I had made him aware of an incident that happened, and he proceeded to tell me it was all my fault of work that wasn't done when I wasn't there, you know, in my absence on sick leave. So to me, that was bullying me or making me feel belittled because I was off on sick leave and stuff wasn't done during that time when I was off, which I know it was because there was someone taking my place. But I just want to make people aware of the damages it can do when you're talking to people in that manner. And he was reported. He was reported in 2016. My point about this is now because a prisoner is stating that they have PTSD, it very possibly could result in a lawsuit that's going to have taxpayers' dollars go towards this lawsuit now because they did not listen when an employee informed them of his unprofessional conduct.
I don't know what the result will be, but I'm surprised we haven't seen any legal or civil action taken on behalf of some of the prisoners for a couple of reasons. Like, even for the folks out there who are tough on crime minded, people are getting credit for double time served because of the conditions at Her Majesty's Penitentiary. In addition to that, with whatever the case may be, whether it be the shortage of correctional officers or mold issues or what have you, we've had inmates say that they have the inability to see their lawyers face to face. That is a problem. That's the lawsuit that I think might be in the offing. It's one thing to not be able to see your friends and family, which is also not ideal, but the absolute legal requirement to have access to your attorney that has been denied or delayed, that's something that I think we might see some action on into the future. Anything very quickly, Tina, before I get one more on?
No, I just want to make that point today that sometimes, they really should listen to people when they're doing it and not just totally put it on the wayside. Because, like I said, now here we are with an actual judge in a courtroom stating how he should have known better. I just want to make that point because I think at some point, before they decide to put someone in a position, such a powerful position at that, after someone has reported his misconduct already, just comes back to bite them in the end. And when they ignore people, and at some way, I mean, they were paying this man a lot of tax dollars. I'm just saying, and this is only one thing that has come out. I, as you know, have been reporting things myself about misconduct and that, and it's going through the avenues it has to go through. But I wanted to make that point because sometimes they really need to listen to people before and stop just putting it on the wayside, because it does have a domino effect, and this is just proof of it. And yes, I agree with you with HMP. We've been promised a new, the taxpayers have been promised a new HMP for years and years and years. And it seems like every time an election is near, it's yet another promise of it. And it's not only people at HMP that, do crimes. It's people at HMP that should be kept in a hospital. It's people at HMP that should never have gone there in the first place. It's just a whole avenue of problems that it causes. So I just want to make a point and bring that up today.
And I'm glad you called.
Thank you, Tina.
Thank you very much. You're welcome.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye. All right, let's try to get to a break on time. So we know that some crew members of the HMCS St. John's are running across the rock to raise money for the Make-A-Wish Canada. So we're going to speak with some runners. I believe they're running between Portabask and Stephenville today. And, of course, we're going to speak now right after this break with the development manager at Make-A-Wish Canada. That's Alyssa Shaw. Alyssa, is that how I pronounce that, Dave? Alyssa? Alyssa Shaw. And then we're speaking with you. Don't go away. Welcome back to the show. Let's go to line number one and take more to the Fund Development Manager with Make-A-Wish Canada. That's Alyssa Shaw. Good morning, Alyssa. You're on the air.
Good morning, Patty. How are you?
Great today. Thank you. How about you?
We're having a great day here in Portabask. We have dipped the flag. The 30th anniversary of Run the Rock has officially commenced. It's been foggy so far, but today is a beautiful day, so it's a beautiful day for a run for sure.
It's fantastic. Just describe how the partnership evolved with the crew members of the HMCS St. John's.
Yeah, so 30 years ago, the year that the ship was actually commissioned, we were Children's Wish back then. We are now Make-A-Wish. We've merged as an organization in 2019. So they actually approached us. They asked, if they could run across the province, and I'm sure a lot of people were shocked to see that they actually run. So it's over 900 kilometers, and it's 30 years strong. So members of HMCS St. John's, the Royal Canadian Navy ship, they do a relay-style run, and we break it up into sections. So today, the first day is from Portabask to Stephenville, so they do it relay-style. So you might see them on the highway, give them a honk, give them a wave, that sort of thing.
It's one thing to be raising funds, but when you have a partnership like Make-A-Wish Canada and Canada's military, in this circumstance crew members at the HMCS St. John's, it's a different level of awareness. Like, I've done a lot of charity work over the years, but this one really jumps off the page. It's an interesting partnership, so while you run across the rock and raising the money, I don't know how many wishes we're going to try to satisfy with this, and you can give us that information in a second though, but with all the focus on the military and all the focus on defence spending and all the patriotism displayed by members of the St. John's, this is an interesting partnership which I think brings a level of awareness that you can't find in many other charitable corners.
Absolutely. I think that this is the most unique event that I've ever heard of. I've been a nonprofit for about 10 years, 4 of which have been with Make-A-Wish. And this is definitely the most unique event that I have ever, heard of or seen. firsthand that happened. So I travel across the island with the crew, and I can tell you we have such a great crew this year. It's mostly made up of alumni, as the HMCS St. John's, the ship itself, is getting deployed. So, they've all kind of come together. They're, taking time away from their families, that sort of thing, just to bring awareness and to support wishes here in Newfoundland and Labrador.
Do you have any stories based on some of the conversations you've had with some of the crew members?
I do. So we have, a couple of crew members I've had the pleasure of dealing with for the past couple of years. I've heard a lot of quotes from them to say, this is a highlight of their military career, or, meeting wished children and their families and experiencing Newfoundland hospitality is just something they've never experienced before. They're from all different walks of life, all different ages, that sort of thing. So it's incredible to see, and incredible that, that they have such a great time as much as we do. Receiving their support is incredible.
What's the fundraising target this year?
We have a big one for the 30th anniversary. So our fundraising total that we're hoping to grant this year is $200,000, which is the equivalent of 2,000 wishes. So I think that that's just absolutely incredible. Last year we had a record-breaking year at $156,000. So that's the most that they've ever raised. So we set the bar high for the 30th anniversary. But I mean, the support that we've received so far, Port aux Basques yesterday alone, we did over $7,000 for a full fundraising day. So Newfoundland hospitality is, alive and well, and the support that we receive for Make-A-Wish as an organization, I think is just incredible. The stories that you hear of people receiving wishes over the years from the crew or otherwise is just really heartwarming and kind of, motivates the crew to just keep going.
I've done a lot of events with Children's Wish over the years. It was Children's Wish back then. To meet some of the Wish kids and their families and hear their stories was really quite something. It was so meaningful for the entire family that it was a completely worthwhile charity to do some work with. It used to be, I want to go to Disney, or I want to go see the Canadians play, or the Leafs play, or what have you. But there's also some really interesting wishes out there. And I heard one story, I can't remember the exact specifics, but there was a Wish kid whose wish was to do something for their big brother. I mean, and that just blew me away. So, just share me one personal story of a wish that struck you the way that one struck me.
I always get asked this question, Patty, to be honest with you, and I always go back to the first wish that I ever granted. It was a young boy named William, and he has an autoimmune disorder that his spine doesn't really work properly, things like that. And he wished for a hot tub. Now, we don't grant hot tub wishes anymore. There's just a lot of logistics and the cost and things like that. We try to keep the average cost of a wish at $10,000. But for him, a hot tub meant that he had freedom in the water. But he also wanted it to go at his nanny and pappy's house because he said that's his favorite place on the planet. So that day was absolutely incredible. And he had asked his mom if I was a fairy godmother, and I said, you know what, I kind of am in a way. So I take that title very proudly. We're a small team of 2 at Make-A-Wish for the entire island. So to have support with events, large events like Run the Rock, our Trees of Joy campaign, all of that sort of thing, and to get people supporting us really means the world, especially, like I said, as a small team of 2, just trying to make wishes come true.
And here I thought that was a completely unique question. Sorry, kidding. Let's appreciate the time. Good luck. Be safe on the Run the Rock across Newfoundland. Beginning in Port aux Basques today, you dipped the flag? Is that what it was?
We do, yeah.
Okay.
So we dip the flag in Port aux Basques and as a ceremonial sort of thing, and then we dip it again when we get to St. John's, just to say, that we went from coast to coast on the island. So for anybody looking to donate, if you don't see the crew on the highway, we have a website up and running. It's www.makeawish.ca/Run the Rock, and you can follow along on our Facebook page. It's Make-A-Wish Canada, Newfoundland and Labrador, for a full schedule to see where the crew's fundraising, that sort of thing. So make sure you come out and support.
And I think we're going to have an opportunity to speak with some crew members. So there'll be some updates on the Run the Rock on this program next week as well. Alyssa, appreciate your time this morning.
Thank you so much. I appreciate it.
Anytime. All the best.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Bye-bye. Alyssa Shaw, Fund Development Manager, Make-A-Wish Canada. Let's keep rolling here. Let's go to Leonard first. Good morning to former ambulance operator for decades here in the province. That's Wade Smith. Good morning, Wade. You're on the air.
Good morning, Patty.
Good morning to you. I think that's a bad phone line, is it, Dave? Yeah. What do you know? Okay. You knew that was going to happen. Let's see here. Let's try line number 2. Caller, you're on the air.
Hello, good morning.
Good morning to you.
I'm just calling about the nurse practitioners. First I want to talk about the government. I don't know how they can go to sleep at night and rest after what they hears about the traveling nurses when people that don't have a doctor and they want to supply the nurse practitioners with under MCP. Like when people go there, they got to pay, and they're giving all kinds of money to the traveling nurses, and but they can't look after. They're just wasting for that in that department, and other departments they don't see. You can talk to them, but they don't listen.
Let's stick with nurse practitioners for a second. I think there's a change coming there. I don't have a crystal ball, but I think there's some moves federally about healthcare transfer dollars and the need for provinces to make access to nurse practitioners free of charge. I mean, of course, it's going to cost the government and via taxpayers, but no money out of pocket when you make that visit. And I think that's a very good thing. And I don't even know why we don't do it already. If people need access to primary care...
If you went to a doctor, it's covered. And I mean to say those nurse practitioners are doing the work of doctors. And they're the same thing as if you went to a doctor. Like I got one, and don't get me wrong, I don't begrudge that I got the paid nurse practitioner, but I think they should be covered under MCP the same as a doctor.
I'm with you.
But then they got money for, if people had all the money that's wasted in the government, we'd be all rich.
Yeah, I don't think there's much of an argument on that front. The Registered Nurses Union say with the estimated cost of $400,000 a year per travel agency nurse, that could be actual 4 registered nurses working in the public sector. Take some of that money and spread it around to things like nurse practitioners able to bill MCP directly. And there seems to me, and I know healthcare is complicated, but there are a few things out there that I think if they were done, we could make things a little bit better. Like I do think the collaborative care clinics is a good idea once they all get up and running and we have the required healthcare professionals. But if I go see a nurse practitioner, as opposed to the fact that I do have a family doctor, but many people don't, it would be just an excellent opportunity for people to get the health care they need. I don't know why it's not in place.
That's just the way I feel. I mean, say, if you don't have you don't have a choice, you can't find a doctor. But then if you can go to a nurse practitioner and they're same as the doctors, why can't you just let them do the work that they're doing, and they're doing good work?
I agree. I'm with you 100%.
And this new fellow that's supposed to be in the healthcare, Dr. Parfrey, like he said about this with the traveling nurses, it's the COVID. They've been worse spending money since the COVID than they were when the COVID was on.
Because something snowballed.
Need excuses, right?
Yeah, fair enough.
They should get him out before he gets his feet in there too far.
Well, Dr. Parfrey is actually the co-chair with Sister Elizabeth Davis of the Health Accord, period. So he's been intimately involved. And I think the Health Accord, there's a lot of that makes sense to me. Different pockets of the province disagree with me, and that's the way the cookie crumbles. But I really appreciate your time this morning, caller. Would you like to say anything else?
No, thank you very much. I just had to get that because, there talks about seniors staying home and that, but they don't give you much help to stay home.
And that also needs to change, which I talk about on this show a lot. It's nice to have you on. Hope you have a nice weekend.
Yeah, thank you very much and have a nice day.
You too. Bye-bye.
Bye.
And, so there are obviously differences between MDs and NPs, doctors and nurse practitioners. At their core, doctors are scientists. Right? They study diseases and try to figure out how to cure them. Nurse practitioners at their core, I guess you would say they are healers. And yes, there's different levels of training and years, but nurse practitioners certainly have a wide scope of practice. Let's see if we have a clear phone line with Wade Smith when we come back after this. Don't go away. Welcome back to the show. Let's see if we have a better line on line number 4. Good morning, Wade Smith. You're on the air.
Good morning, Patty.
Good morning to you. Welcome to the show.
Patty, I just talking about the ambulance service, and I'm listening to a program the other night, and I've been listening to mental health services and government, the way they're portraying this since June. And I tell you, I just don't like the way that they got all this put together, because for one thing, their ambulance system in the province since June has deteriorated. And when they're talking about the money, they were talking about, we saved a lot of money. It was some odd millions, close to $100 million for ambulance operators. Well, Patty, that's really not true. In the day, we had 178 ambulances in the province, which cost the provincial taxpayers about $54 million. Now we have 150 ambulances, which cost $100 million. So those figures are just not adding up. And they talk about response times and how better the system is. Well, that's not true either, because if you look back to a document that was actually put out by Saltwater back a few months ago, the average response time to Whitburn alone is 22.5 minutes. And I've A-tipped a lot of this information. And if you talk to the people around, and I've talked to a good many people because I do first aid courses just about all over the place, and they're telling me response time for ambulances are anywhere from 45 minutes to around Chapel Arm, Norman's Cove, to over an hour. The ambulances are parked out here by Newhill Clinic, and one A-tip that I got back in October, November months, there's 8 shifts where there was nobody on that ambulance, although it was parked out by the door for everyone to see, and there were 6 shifts in Dildo where there wasn't anybody on. The Whitburn ambulance is called into St. John's numerous times, along with other ambulances in the province to cover off because they don't have staff in there. And on one occasion a few months ago, and I even sent this stuff to my MHA, Sherry Gann Walsh, 9 ambulances pulled out of the area. There was only 1 ambulance available within an hour, and that ambulance never had a paramedic on it. There was 2 AMRs. So the system is definitely not better, and I don't like the way that they're portraying this to the public that it is. And with regard, they were talking too about the wages that the private operator paid out, how much better it is now. Well, that might be true, but then you have to look at the facts behind that. When we signed the contract back in 2003, the government started putting dedicated wages into the system. So what we started doing in 2010 when provincial medical oversight came in, then we started looking for parity. So what government done, they actually put the wages, what we had to pay, and then all those wages were audited by Grant Thornton. So we had to send in a spreadsheet. And out of that spreadsheet, there was nothing there that covered off the payroll costs that we had to pay, and government didn't pay that. Plus, anytime we had to cover someone off for holidays or anything like that, wasn't ever covered. So when you look at what was happening with the private operators compared to what was happening to the operators who were actually in the hospital system, there's no comparison, because we could never meet the target, and government never could give us the target. So I don't think it's very fair to say that it's way better than the private operator system, because the private operator system was actually controlled by government. And we fought for years and years and years through multiple negotiations to try to get wages up to where they should be and get pension plans and everything else put in place for everyone. But then again, it all fell on deaf ears. Government never came across with a contract where we were able to do that.
That's some of the issue, I think, with the disjointed arrangement of some 60 private ambulance contracts, is unless everybody was going to play along at the exact same time, implementation of pension plans and other supports was going to always be a problem. So there's no reason why it shouldn't work better the way it's currently constructed, but I thought it was really interesting turn of phrase when the representative of NL Health Services said it's costing around $100 million, which is a little bit more than it used to cost, but didn't offer any additional information what a little bit more meant. So I had a look. The last number I found was about $60 million. So there's a long way, and it doesn't constitute little, between 60 and 100. So, yeah. And insofar as efficiency and response times, I don't know, it might have been Dave Williams told me there was someone in need of an ambulance in Mount Pearl, and it took an hour for the ambulance to arrive in Mount Pearl. Plus, they said that they were telling people working in the service to stop using the word or the phrase red alert. If we're not tracking it, then we don't know if anything's working better. We don't know if the response times are up or down. So we have to be able to understand the bad news if we're going to try to make things better.
That's right. and I sent in an ATIP because I wanted to know why the ambulance in Whitburn was being pulled out and parked out on the road out in CBS, where they had no access to any restaurant or toilet or anything like that. And they came back with the ATIP, we can't tell you where it's to. But still now, we got a provincial radio system, we got AVLs, government AVLs, and plus we had our own, that can track that vehicle and can tell you exactly where it's to. And then they talked about, well, we're going to get the closest ambulance for you to respond. But what's happening is they're pulling the ambulances out of around Placentia, Whitburn, and CBS, and all down North Shore, down Carbonear, pulling all those ambulances in, and they're saying, just in case there's a call. But what happens if there's a call out here? A good friend of mine waited 55 minutes for an ambulance. And I'll give you one. They talked a bit different other times. I don't know if you can recall the man that went into Tim Hortons in Whitburn back a year, I think it was a year ago. Anyway, one of my staff that used to work for me was actually down there getting coffee, and they tended the patient. 45 minutes for an ambulance.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, even if it's not working and it's not streamlined as intended right this minute, let's not gloss over things. Let's just get accurate, up-to-date information, whether it be on cost, whether it be for repairs and fuel and response times and everything under the sun. You know, that was always the question that I was asking prior to the integration was, what's it going to look like insofar as how many ambulances, how many paramedics, how many EMRs are working today, what will be working tomorrow? And it's been hard to get those numbers.
Well, they said, I think, I'm not sure, they said it was a little over 800 and some. That was EMRs plus dispatchers.
Yeah.
But prior to that, we used to have paper sent out telling us at the end of, everyone had their paperwork in by February. April 1st, you were ready to go. So after that, the government knew exactly how many people were working in the province as EMR and paramedics. We had 920. So where'd they go? I know when my staff, they left the system altogether because what was happening is that trust was gone. And they weren't getting any recognition for the work that they were doing. I mean, this is hard work out here. And when you look at the way the healthcare system works, it's like a chain, and it always was. That's the way we always taught it. Because if you don't have a good ambulance service that can get to that patient, that stroke patient, that person's in cardiac arrest, and get them into the emergency departments and get them into the specialists where they need to go, then that link is broken. So that means your whole system falls apart.
Yeah, it's all very carefully intertwined. And you're right, if one thing goes awry, then something else goes awry at the exact same time. Wade, anything else quickly, because I'm a bit late for the news.
Yeah, just one thing, I'm going to send you this as well. They talk about agreement on trade and how provinces should work together in healthcare and everything else. Well, I got a document from Industry Canada dated July the 18th, 1994. First Minister's meeting, and they were supposed to have this agreement in place by July the 1st, where they provide rules to prevent government from erecting new trade barriers that require reduction in existing zones across Canada. So here we are, 2025, and we're still talking about it. And 2012, we brought in labor force mobility, which was allowed people for paramedics to go everywhere. And all of a sudden, we brought in these big, high-priced exams, which is kind of blocking people from getting into the system, where we had our own, which didn't cost any. And we're still setting up these trade barriers, and the trade barriers happen to be these exams, which we farm out to one company, who farms it out to another company, and everyone gets money. And here we are, we're not getting the people in place that we were getting prior to 2012. So it's a whole mess, and people are just going off in tangents and not saying how many people do we need. And we've asked this for 20 years. How many people do we need? How many people do we need to train? Where's the training organizations to? And let's get these in place, because what's happening now is we got people dropping out. We got people who can't get in. People are not making the grade through these testings, which half the questions don't even make any sense. But still now we're losing people. And I don't like the way this is going, Patty, I'll tell you the truth.
Understood. Point made. I appreciate your time, Wade.
Thanks, Patty.
You're welcome. All the best.
Okay, bye.
All right, bye-bye. Let's take a break for the news. When we come back, Gary's next in the queue, and then you. Don't go away. Welcome back to the show. Well, we gave the 7 members of the U20 female ball hockey team a shout out here. 7 of the Newfoundlanders and Labradorians. Apparently, there's 2 young fellas from here also representing Team Canada U20 at the Worlds. Andy Knight and Scott Kirby. There's their shout out. Let's go to line number 5. Gary, you're on the air.
Good morning, Patty. I'm glad I phoned you today. Listen, Dave gave me the lady's name that was singing in Dublin yesterday. What a special, heartwarming story that was. Her dream was to go to Dublin and sing Newfoundland songs because she learned all her songs here from Newfoundland. And oh man, what a warm story that was. And she met a bunch of Newfoundlanders on the plane. And then they said, well, maybe we'll see you at the concert. And here they show up at the concert. Oh, wow, that's Newfoundlanders supporting Newfoundlanders.
Yeah, that's Jackie Sullivan from the Southern Shore. She's over in Dublin. I think she's making her way to Germany next. Is that what I heard? Yeah, so yeah, Dublin Germany. At Temple Bar.
She got quite a trip, so she represents Newfoundland very well. Then, so we need to send a bouquet of flowers out to her and all the ladies attending the concerts there and supporting her from Newfoundland. I think that's such a wonderful story.
I love it.
Yeah, me too. And one other thing, congratulations to our first place Toronto Blue Jays. Isn't that wonderful?
I'm loving it.
Well, me too. And you know what? 20 years ago, something happened in 1993.
Yeah, World Series, back to back.
Yeah, they went. That's the last time they won the World Series. So they mentioned that on Sportsnet last night. Says just a coincidence. Maybe something's going to happen again this year. We never know. Wouldn't that be nice?
Who knows what's going to happen with that team? They're definitely buyers at the trade deadline. So I hope they can bring in another big arm. And I mean, we got to remember the bulk of this hot streak has been done without Jimmy Garcia, without Dalton Varsho, without Anthony Santander. And I don't even know what you do with Santander when he comes back. I mean, you can't hit him higher than 7th based on the bats that got going currently.
What a story of the old guy, George Springer. Wow, isn't that something?
Fantastic.
Oh man, that made me really happy. I was so happy last night watching the game last night. Oh man, I thought, wow, they swept the Blue Jays. Like you said on the preamble, it's probably the first time they ever swept the Blue Jays in Toronto ever. So that's quite an accomplishment.
Yeah, Springer was desperate last year. I have a Springer jersey, and I was, tempted to hide it in the back of the closet. This year, I mean, he just looks like he did when he was an Astro. Like, he's really a super player these days. Good for him.
Yeah. You better put that sweater on and cheer them on.
Oh, I got no problem. We watch the Jays all the time at our house.
Yeah, and there, one more thing that's happening today, the Calgary Stampede is opening today, so, because I was born in Calgary, so I hope everybody has a good time in the Calgary Stampede too.
I've been to the Stampede a few times. You wonder what the future holds, because with the wagon races and some of the horses that have been hurt and consequently killed, I don't know what the future holds for the Stampede. It's a good time as an attendee, but still lots of concerns swirl around that particular rodeo. Anyway, hopefully they have a nice time, and hopefully there's a safe Stampede this go around. Good to have you on, Gary. Appreciate the time.
Okay, you have a wonderful weekend now. Okay, bye.
Okay, bye-bye. All right, let's keep rolling here. Let's go to line number 1. Jack, you're on the air.
Good morning, Patty. I called in originally about something else, but then I heard Mr. Smith's call about the ambulance service. So anyway, I'd like to say that back in October, my wife, she had an emergency whereby we almost lost her. So anyway, I called an ambulance, and I live in Mount Pearl. And anyway, it took nearly an hour to get an ambulance to Mount Pearl. So anyway, I found out after that the ambulance had to come from way up in Conception Bay. But anyway, but also, too, the people on board the ambulance are not trained to the level of paramedic. So anyway, the EMR level of certification, I know it well, and basically what it is a first aid course. Now, good on the people doing the work. However, I think the government should really and truly make sure that the people who are on those ambulances, are actually trained and able to do the job up to the level of a paramedic, and not just a level 1 paramedic, but the full, level 3 paramedic level. And anyway, I've heard so many people tell me they've had to wait for an ambulance to come from Brigus. They've had to wait for one to come from Carabinier and places like that. So I don't think that ambulance service is very good. at all, to tell you the truth.
Well, it's interesting because on the heels of Mr. Smith's call, got an email right away from a paramedic. And, back in the days when there was a huge problems with the paramedics and the disparity between working for the public sector and the private sector regarding pay and time off and that type of stuff, and paramedics leaving the province, this particular paramedic says they've never been happier. So I guess we need to have the association on to, whether that be Rodney Goody or someone else, to talk about exactly what they're hearing from the members as to whether or not it's better, whether or not it's worse, and what's the state of affairs of this new integrated system.
Yeah. But Paddy, the thing about it is, I don't think that anyone in the St. John's or Mount Pearl area should be waiting an hour or nearly an hour for an ambulance. I think that's ridiculous.
I agree.
Yeah.
Well, I just told the story this morning. It was that, someone in Mount Pearl needed an ambulance, waited an hour. And I don't know what the response times look like in the metro region. But all that said, you shouldn't have to wait an hour for an ambulance anywhere.
No, that's
really,
right.
Realistically.
That's right. That's right. Paddy, if I might, I'd like to speak to one other point.
Sure.
Originally, I want to call you about the memorial to the Ocean Ranger, the victims of the Ocean Ranger. That's down there by Kittyvilly Lake. Yep. And in my opinion, it's tucked in the woods. You can't even see it hardly. You really got to go look for it to find it. And like there last week, now there was a lot of controversy on that sign for St. John's down in the park. Yeah. But anyway, I think something else that should be looked at too is moving that memorial, because in my opinion, there's an awful lot of people who would never find that memorial if they came to St. John's and look for it. And, I think it should be out in a place, where the public can see it. And, never forget the incident, okay, by seeing it. And, in my opinion, it's just tucked away and it can't be seen.
It certainly is off the beaten path there, no doubt about it. I remember when it was first erected, and I asked about the location as to why it wasn't closer to the path itself, because then, of course, you would see it. And I was told, well, they put it back there so that they could have as many people not standing on the path when they have some celebrations or memorials at the site. It kind of made sense, but you're right. You can walk around Kittyvilly and not even notice it.
That's right. That's right. I think it should be out in a place where the public can see it all the time.
Fair enough. And I appreciate the call, Jack. Anything else this morning, sir?
Okay. No, sir, that's it. Thank you very much.
You're welcome. Bye-bye.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
All right, there you go. So, yeah, I can't speak for paramedics because I'm not a paramedic. So we've heard from NL Health Services, and I think, Dave, maybe it's worthwhile. I don't know if Rodney Goodney's still the president of the Paramedics Association. What are the members saying as to whether or not things are better, or whether or not they think that there's been some sort of gag put in place, because we were told that people working in the system were not allowed to say or not supposed to use red alert, which is when we identify when there's a call to 911 looking for an ambulance and there isn't one available. Those are pretty important questions. Let's take a break. When we come back, there's a caller who wants to talk about a strike on Kenmount Road, and then we'll speak with you. Don't go away. Welcome back to the show. Let's go line number 3. Caller, you're on the air.
Good morning, Paddy. How are you?
Doing okay. How about you?
I'm doing good. I'd like to say you do a great job. You have a great show.
Thank you very much.
Colin, you're welcome. I'm calling today about the strike that's over there in the capital Hyundai. So I worked with NAPE for 30 years plus, and we had a strong union. When we went on strike, we wouldn't let people cross a line on driving accents and electric cars almost 30 years. But I don't have it in my heart to cross the line. I watch people go in there and out of there on the lot sometimes when I'm driving by. So I called today just to ask the people not to cross the line of the workers. The mechanics are on strike into the dealership in there. I'd like to say, people should just be respectful. We're a small community. Don't cross the line. I'm asking all the unions. I'm reaching out to NAPE, QB, teacher associations, and so on. Just think about it. If you were on strike, would you like somebody to cross your line? Probably not. And I'm asking people, please just don't do that. Support the mechanics who fix your vehicles. And I have a question. If those mechanics are on strike, and they're on strike for a while now, who's fixing the cars that are going in and out there? Are they coming out safely? And that's what I'm trying to think about. Like when I drive by there, say cars are going in and out. and just don't cross the line until the strike is over, and make sure your cars are probably getting properly repaired, you know.
Let me bounce this off you. So is there a difference in your mind of crossing a picket line, for instance, if I'm a replacement worker, like people like to call them scabs, or if I'm simply someone who wants to go in and buy a car? So do you treat those two different people differently when it comes to crossing a picket line?
Well, I'll tell you now, I started in the 80s working with Eastern Health. A picket line was a picket line. We were on strike. And I'm going to tell you, strikes back in the 80s sometimes got hard.
Oh, yeah.
It's unfortunate that, I remember at the Waterford back in the day, the police had to come in, and they come in with prepared. So guess what we did? We shut that building down. And guess what? The strike was over. And I'm not saying that that's what they want to do today, because people in the community got to be respectful. But people should realise that the mechanics are fixing the cars. So if they're on strike, how could cars be going in and out of there to get repaired? That's the question I got, but I'm just talking as a local person who want a community to be strong. Think about it. If any group is on strike, just be respectful. Don't cross that line. It don't make sense until the strike is over and resolved. You know, and I think that's where the dealership should play a big role. Work things out. Respect the employees who are probably making them who knows how much a year annually.
Yeah, I don't know what's going on up there necessarily. You know, whether or not that every single mechanic is on the picket line every single day, or they rotate it in to keep the garage alive. I don't know, but that's something I suppose I could probably figure out.
Well, that'd be probably a good question for a union rep from the organisation. But I just know after driving vehicles for so many years, I just don't have it in my heart to cross the line. And that's just bottom line for me. So, you know, if I was working with the NAPE still, if we had a strike, I would be strong on that line. And I think everybody understands that. Jerry Earls, they're on so often throughout the years. They understand what a strike means. People need to support each other.
Fair enough. And, you know, a lot of unionised folks probably think very similar to what you're saying here this morning. I do wonder how many people think that if I'm simply going in as someone who wants to buy a car, would I be treated differently crossing that picket line, say, for instance, than someone who's in there to replace someone who's on the picket line? Anyway, but that's, I mean, I appreciate you sharing your opinion here this morning. Anything else you'd like to say about it? Because interestingly enough, there's a union president in the queue right behind you. So we'll get their thoughts.
Well, that sounds great. I tell you, if I was going to buy a vehicle, though, Paddy, and I was a strong person who was any union, no matter if you're from West Coast of Canada or to St. John's, Newfoundland, I think personally I would do an online shopping first. I would not disrespect those workers who are trying to make an honest living. You know, the cost of living has gone up everywhere, Paddy. We all know that. Everybody's crying about minimum wage and other things. So if those guys are only looking for wages and some other benefits, give it to them. That organisation is doing well, you know, and I'm sure they can afford to give them a little raise. And if they're going to make people think awkward about their company, you know what they're going to do? People are probably going to go buy another company's car. And I would not go in across that line to buy a car. I would personally shop online, pick up my phone, call a sales representative and say, look, when the strike is over, I'll be in to see you. Until then, I won't be back. And that's what I'm doing with it.
Fair enough. I'm glad you called the show this morning. Thanks for doing it.
You have a great day. You always have a great show. I listen as often as I can, and I love to get educated, and sometimes it's only through your show.
Well, thanks for being part of it this morning. Thank you.
You have a great day.
You
Thanks
too.
Again.
All right, bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
All right, so see if we can get a follow-up thought from Michael McDonald, who's the Cup W St. John's Local 126 President, and joins us on line number 2. Michael, you're on the air.
Hey, Paddy, how's it going this morning?
Great today. How about you?
Not too bad, all things considering.
Yeah, before we get into why you called, Michael, any thoughts on what that previous caller had to say about, you know, the sanctity of picket lines and how people cross and why they cross?
Yeah, I do agree with a lot of the sentiments that the brother before me brought forward with regards to respecting people's picket lines and for having support for one another's right now. I think we should have support for all workers out there because I think everybody's really feeling the pinch and the change that's taking place in the world and the economies. So, you know, if you got a replacement worker crossing the line, obviously that's going to raise tensions for the workers, and obviously that's probably a tactic that the employer uses to create a dilemma that then has to be addressed. And it also makes a good media story, and it creates, I guess, a longer conversation about I don't know if many people understand things like the Mohawk Valley formula, where it's kind of like a strike breaking method that was used back in the 20s, 30s, 40s, 50s, but it's kind of been changed and modernized in today's society, and it's no longer police and newspapers. Now it's algorithms and ads and getting into the community and breaking a strike before it actually happens. So yeah, with the federal government bringing forth anti-scab legislation, perhaps that's not something that workers will have to worry about, manning a line to stop a replacement worker from doing their work. But when you have the public that is also looking for that service, it's a hard conversation to have with them. I know on our picket line, if a member came to Station A to pick up their mail during the 5 weeks we were out, it was a conversation with them to say that, hey, can you respect our line? And there's really nothing for you to pick up at the box in there anyways, because nothing's been delivered or moved in the building. So it's if you can maintain a respectful environment in conversation, I think that people can come to understandings in those scenarios.
Yeah, I'm going to follow up on the Hyundai base one. I'm just curious now whether or not they have a rotation of mechanics in and out of the garage, and actually what is going on up there. I'll see what I can find out. On the Canadian Union of Postal Workers, I always say CUPW, and I don't think people want me to say that. The Canadian Union of Postal Workers, the Labour Relations Board is forcing the 55,000 unionised members to vote. When is that?
Yeah, we still don't know exactly when the vote is taking place. We're still in a process right now where they have asked our members to verify their emails or contact information for anyone that has an email or uses an email, and then there'll be a separate system set up for those that need to use the telephone to call. So we still don't have an exact date for when that's going to take place.
The Canada Post was, for a long time, self-sufficient. Then a couple of years ago, had to borrow $1 billion from the government. Now operational losses over $1 billion this year. Between that, and I guess this message for the folks who rely on Canada Post, which is not everybody, but everybody at the last mile does rely on Canada Post.
Yeah.
What's the message based on $1 billion plus operational loss, wage demands from the union, and the future of Canada Post? Can they all work as one? Because something has to give.
Yeah, I think they can work themselves out. I mean, I know I was involved with the local back in the 2011, 2013, 15 era when Stephen Harper was around, and we were making profits at that point. The last year we made a profit was actually when our present CEO Doug Edinger took over the helm. So, you had a guy that came in, he made a plan. He said he was going to spend billions of dollars in about a 5-year span, and he did just that. They reported it on their annual reports as losses instead of investments. And you come up with the Chicken Little story that the sky is falling. And then you scare your customers away from using the service while you're in a labor disruption, and it creates a chaos situation where it turns the public against the workers who are just trying to stand up for the public service, and not asking for huge wage increases. It's really actually keeping up with par with what inflation was, and trying to tread water rather than asking for an extra bucket of water that you don't need.
I'm not sure how to ask this question, but that really confusing story about 20,000 pieces of return mail to NL Health Services, that the story says they sat in community mailboxes. Is that the case, or what can you tell us about that?
Yeah, I'm not quite sure. The 20,000 pieces of it sat in community mailboxes. That might be a little bit outlandish of a story for someone to believe, but I do know the fact of the matter is that we used to have what was called a delivery support unit position in our plant, and that was the individual that actually did the return to sender mail. It was also done in operations for a little bit, and the corporation decided that they were going to remove that position and send the work to New Brunswick. Without consulting with the union in a proper manner, and obviously the decision that they made has affected the public service and the service that those members, those customers are receiving. And it's not only NL services. I've heard from other entities, we call them LVRs, but they're just local businesses that have PO boxes and stuff. they've also received a large amount of this return to sender mail. So we can only assume that mail went to New Brunswick and did not get processed as fast, and then had to be transported back to Newfoundland in order to be sent then back to those customers. So I think it's a little bit more than the mail just sitting in a CMB, because we also had an arbitration about it, and our previous president, Craig Dyer, was the individual that argued the file. And essentially, we said that they didn't consult with us properly when they moved the mail, and that it was going to be detrimental to the service. The arbitrator agreed because of the language in our collective agreement. If the consultation didn't take place, then the situation would have to be restored to the way it was previously. And even though arbitrator Thistle has given us that decision, the corporation has yet to act on bringing that work back to St. John's. So this is why I believe we're seeing the amount of return to sender mail that's, I guess, being backlogged and then sent out all in one big swoop to these customers.
Yeah, you could be right.
And the amount of time that these return to sender letters, some of them I'm hearing are years old, which is absolutely ridiculous to be hearing that kind of information coming in.
Yeah, and for me, it's not even necessarily where the mail sat or for how long it's at. It's just how reliant Newfoundland and Labrador Health Services is on sending out mail. So 2.5 million notices sent out to suppliers and patients last year. And like I mentioned, if I got a haircut appointment this afternoon, I get a text reminder. I don't have to get something in the mail. So I just think there's better ways to do things. And this is not about, further complicating or jeopardizing your job and or the unionized postal workers. But when we're talking health, it just seems like a strange way to conduct business in 2025.
Oh my God, yes, I'm in complete agreement with you, and did not take your comments that way at all. I just wanted to make sure that they were clarified to let the customers and the people in the public know that there's a little bit more to that window, and we could be providing a better service, and we're screaming and shouting that we should be. And it doesn't seem like the managers across the table from us, take the public service as serious as the workers do. I'm
glad you filled in some of the info gaps this morning, Michael. Thanks for doing it.
That was nice talking to you again, Petty.
My pleasure. Take care and stay in touch.
Cheers. Yep, cheers.
Michael McDonald, Canadian Union Postal Workers, President, Local 129, I think it was. Let's take a break. Don't go away. Welcome back to the show. Let's go to line number 1. Good morning, Mike. You're on the air.
Good morning, Paddy. How are you this morning?
Doing okay. How about you?
Are you top shelf?
Top shelf it is.
Don't fall off.
I'll try not to.
Hey, but what's on the go with the old rebate on GST?
What do you mean?
Well, it's supposed to be direct deposit.
Yeah.
And it hasn't happened.
Why? When was it supposed to be out?
Today.
Okay. I don't know why that would be.
And I called CRA. I got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 numbers here written down on a piece of paper that I had to call in order to get an answer from somebody, but it's all automated. Press 1 for this, press 2 for that, press 3 for that, or go to www and everything. It's torment and aggravation.
I don't know why it would be, because so the next date, so it's July, October, January, April, I guess are the next 4 quarterly payments. I don't see any notice here. Yeah, I mean, I see one thing about, the increase in the GST rebate to roll out on the 4th of July to millions of eligible Canadians. Yeah, I don't see anything telling me that there's an issue with the direct deposit today.
Oh, okay. Okay, so if there's no issue, that's it. That's all I can do. I'll have to wait another couple of days, I suppose.
Yeah, I'd be surprised. Like, generally speaking, if there's going to be some direct hiccup on things like that, we'll get a heads up. But I don't see anything telling me that there's a problem today.
Is there an exact number that I should call, to see? One, like I say, I have to call them five different numbers here this morning.
I don't know.
What's going on?
I'll click on this particular. Blah 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 blah. No, it's just the general number on the GST page. Yeah, that's it. Yeah. No specific.
What's your number is that?
Well, let's see here.
Do I already have it?
I just scrolled right past a couple of numbers. Let me see if there's anything at the bottom. 1 second there, bud.
For Newfoundland. Newfoundland.
No, you'll only ever get a federal number.
No. I did have a federal number. I had 709-256-1400.
Yeah, that's the one I've got right in front of me too.
I called that, and they gave me a 1-800-959-8281, and of course I got a bunch of recordings and.
Now you haven't changed any banking information because I just saw an email floated in. Buddy said that he got his rebate in his bank account this morning.
Yeah, right, exactly. And I'm after talking to a couple of my buddies. They already got theirs this morning.
Yeah, so there's another. I'll give you this sneaky number. This might get you in the back door. So
sneaky number.
Yeah.
Okay, well, I like sneaky.
Yeah, me too. So it's 1-800.
Yeah.
387. 1193.
I already tried it.
Oh, okay.
I already tried it.
Because that's a little backdoor number that I found. But I don't know why you didn't get yours, because I've seen now 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 emails in that 30 seconds saying, I got mine. So
4, 5. 5 numbers I'm after calling.
Yeah. Wish I could help you out, Mike.
That 1-800-387-1193.
Yeah.
You got to go in and it tells you hit 1 for this, hit 1 for that, and 2 for that, and 3. Like it's stupid. And it tells you to go into like on your email or on your computer and do this. I'm computer illiterate, right?
Yeah, but some of those things, like My Account with the Government of Canada, it's really easy to set up and it's very efficient. So, I mean, even if you're computer illiterate, if someone walked you through how to set up a My Account with the government, it's very helpful. And it removes...
I already had, like, direct deposit and everything all set up with...
This is a CRA account. This is not a bank account for direct deposit for whether it be child tax benefits or GST rebates or whatever the case may be.
No child tax.
No, I didn't say you did. So it's a really helpful way to avoid having to call and press 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 if you get a CRA user ID and password. It's really fundamental to set up.
To go in on the computer and do it?
Yeah, if you Google up sign into your CRA account, you'll go to a page to establish it, and you'll waltz right through it, nothing to it.
Sign in. I got to write this down, but...
Yeah, just Google sign into your CRA account or something along those lines.
Sign in CRA.
Yeah.
Okay, God bless. Love listening to you every morning.
Thanks a lot, Mike. Appreciate it. Good luck. Let me know how it works.
Take care.
Okay, buddy. All the best. All right, before we get to the break, let's go to line number 4. Good morning, Nick Cranford. You're on the air.
Yeah. Good morning, Patty.
Morning to you.
Yes, I just want to let everyone know about my little book tour I'm going to be taking across the island starting next week with the Newfoundland word searches. I'm sure a lot of people have heard of them. So starting on Tuesday, next Tuesday, July 8th, I will be in Stephenville at the Beavercraft from 12 to 2. I will be at the Arlams from 2 to 4. And on July 9th, I will be at the Coles Bookstore in the Cornerbrook Mall and from 1 to 3. I will be at the Island Treasures from 3 to 5. And next Thursday, July 10th, I will be at the Gander Co-op in Gander from 2 to 4. And next Friday, July the 11th, I will be at the Ock Island Winery in Twillingate from 1 to 3.
Sounds good. This word search book has been super popular.
Mm-hmm. Oh, yes. Oh, no doubt about it. I mean, I've also been taking it across the country, too.
Oh, is that right?
Yes, yeah. I've got them all for all 10 provinces out now, starting out. And I also got a word search of Canada, which I'm currently working on getting into stores. So you'll be hearing more of that very soon.
Rattle off the dates and locations one more time, Nick, before we have to go.
All right, sounds good. So next Tuesday, I'll be in Stephenville, Beavercraft 12 to 2, Arlams 2 to 4. Wednesday, July 9th, I'll be at Coles Cornerbrook 1 to 3, Island Treasures 3 to 5. Thursday the 10th, Gander Co-op 2 to 4, and Friday the 11th, Ock Island Winery from 1 to 3.
Good for you. Good luck with it, Nick. Thanks for doing it.
All the best, Patty.
Same to you. Bye-bye. Here we go. Nick Crawford behind the Word Search book, Flanker Press. Let's see here. Let's take a break. When we come back, Bob's in the queue. I think he's a first-time caller. Is that what I'm seeing on my screen? He wants to talk about the Monday Pan Regatta, which is scheduled to take place this weekend. Don't go away. Welcome back to the show. Let's go to line number 3. Good morning, Bob Fitzpatrick. You're on the air.
Good morning, Patty. Thank you for taking my call. Been listening to Open Line for years. And throughout the numerous hosts, I got to say, I think you're the GOAT.
Thanks, Bob. I appreciate it.
So I want to talk about the Monday Pan Regatta. Pick up or just fill in some of the blanks from Councillor Nosery yesterday.
Okay.
So my son he's planted his roots in Monday Pan, fourth generation Fitzpatrick in Monday Pan. So I did my research just for it was just a university term paper. Now, having said that, there's a couple of other researchers who I feel I should mention. Roger Maunder wrote a book on Monday Pan some years ago.
I'm in it.
You're in it, okay?
I'm one of the characters. Yeah, I played baseball growing up with Roger.
Yeah. That was, I guess, more or less a coming-of-age story, and I guess the problem with it, we kind of felt that, well, that could have been any neighborhood. Also, Darren McGraw did some wonderful research on a number of different topics, including the community of Monday Pond, and oddly enough, in his mention of the regatta, he referenced me. So we can't talk about the regatta really without mentioning the Colonial Cordage Company. Without Colonial Cordage Company, there would have been no regatta. That brought people in from in the 1882 it was built. Began production 1883. It brought people in from many bays, Placentia Bay in particular, who settled in the outskirts of St. John's, the Monday Pond. And before long, and these were primarily Catholic people, so that need was recognized, and the church was built in the 1930s. Monsignor Summers was appointed the first Roman Catholic chaplain for St. Teresa's Parish, so he thought it would be a good idea to have a regatta. And at the time, regattas were fairly, they were common. I mean, they were held in Kent's Pond, Portugal Cove, 4 or 5 mentions of garden parties and regattas in and around St. John's. So Monday Pond got started. The first one was in 1930, and I wrote a fictitious story in the introduction of my paper of how my mom and dad met. My dad did row in the first race as a juvenile, 16 years old. He won his race. So it was very popular, so popular, in fact, that families would come and boil up on the north side of the pond, which was the Monday Pond Road side. And at the time when Monday Pond was almost twice the size that it is now, because beginning in the late 50s, I think that's when the city started to backfill Monday Pond, and it diminished the size of it greatly. So in one particular year, there were something like 100 crews that wanted to qualify. So it was almost on par with the main regatta. And my research was hampered. I did some primary research and some secondary research. I don't know if you've ever heard of the Frank Graham Room. This was an area of research conducted on sports by the late Frank Graham. So I didn't have access to that at the time. His catalog was being organized, so I couldn't access that. I also could not access the Roman Catholic Episcopal Parish records. They were being cataloged. So I worked with what I had, and I did an okay paper, I guess. But that's all it was, and a lot of questions were raised that would require further research. My professor at the time, Dr. Maura Hanrahan, a brilliant lady, she suggested to me that, she said, Bob, you have a book there. And I said, well, yes, perhaps, but I certainly didn't have the energy that it would take. So I'll just leave that for another, some younger researcher who's got the time and effort to put in at it. Because I know there's more information out there that I could not access. Monsignor Summers himself was alive at the time. He was at St. Patrick's Home. The administrator wouldn't let me in to see him, and that was okay. I mean, perhaps he was in ill health at the time. So the Monday Pond Regatta concluded in 1949, and my research could not indicate why. I could not find out why. I exhausted all my resources, and I got nowhere with that. So I'm sure the information is out there somewhere. So in 2017, a committee consisted of myself, Ted Doyle, Caval Snow, Bus Osmond, and the late Bill Cummings. Now, 4 of those folks, they all grew up and lived on Pierce Avenue and Connors Avenue. I lived on Black Marsh. We formed a committee in 2017, and we said, let's get this up and running again. Now, we were very cautious. We were proceeding cautiously. We were just getting our legs, and we did some good work. And we got it up and running, and after the year or two, we handed it over to another committee headed by Tony Dunn. And I have to give full credit to Tony and his committee, who've taken it and ran with it, and are doing a much better job than we ever imagined. They're doing a terrific job in keeping it alive, and they're very well organized. And I just hope that we can keep that tradition going. So this year, the regatta will take place on the north side of the pond. We're using a portable wharf, as Greg mentioned yesterday, so the wharf is in location. The first year we were situated at the top of the pond, just right near where the new community center is. So it's something that I'm very proud of, having been part of the committee that got it up and running again. And I'm so happy that the community of Monday Pond have taken it on and are keeping it going.
This is great. I'm enjoying this call. A couple of questions. So, Bob, can you tell us one more time the corporation that you give credit to being the backbone of starting the Monday Pond Regatta back in 1930?
I certainly can. That would be Monsignor Summers. Monsignor Summers, who was the pastor at St. Teresa's Parish. And as a matter of fact, my paper reads, A Monday Pond Regatta, a legacy to Father H.A. Summers, Father Harry Summers. So it was, not only did he get the regatta up and running, but he built a school. And he also built a satellite school, by the way. There was a St. Teresa school up around Thorburn Road somewhere. And that was perhaps a one-room wooden school. Kids from this neck of the woods would attend school out there. And he started the church. He built the church in 1938, 1939. And with the help of the Sisters of Mercy, he built the convent there for the nuns. So all the credit that goes to Monsignor Summers, and also what I said in my research. Not only Monsignor Summers, but especially the committee. The committee were so instrumental. And I have to give full credit again to the women. The unsung heroes are the women. They worked behind the scenes. They did so much hard work organizing all the tea suppers, the decorating, setting up. They did so much hard work, and they went unrecognized. And I have to give the women so much credit. They're on equal footing with the men.
Another couple of very quick questions. So you mentioned regattas of years gone by, whether it be on Placentia, which of course they row on the salt water, which is a fascinating race. When you talked about Portugal Cove, was that punts in the Tickle or was it shells on Nery's Pond?
I honestly don't know. Now I'm reading. I said they were very popular. Held at Portugal Cove, Kent's Pond, Octigam Pond, St. Joseph's Parish, Round Pond in the St. John's area. So they held regattas and or garden parties. Also, Mount Cashel, Balleen, Torres Cove, Outer Cove, Pooch Cove, and Bay Bulls, but to name a few. So I'm just reading right from my paper here now.
It's great stuff. Enjoyable conversation here this morning. Bob, before I go to the news, would you like to offer another couple of tidbits or anything else you'd like to say?
I would like to invite the entire city of St. John's just to come and see the rebirth of an old tradition that has, grown up again. We're a very proud community, the people of Mundy Pond, and we're a very tight community. And even before we have our own Facebook page, and even before we had that, we had something in the neighborhood where people would contribute stories, reminiscent, historic facts, etc. I think my paper is on the Mundy Pond face page. So a Facebook page, excuse me. So I think you'll find that there, and I'd be happy to deliver a copy of it to you at the studio, Patty.
I'd appreciate it.
And also, I couldn't do that without giving you a copy also of the research I did on the Colonial Cordage Company. And
I'm happy to have a look at that as well, Bob, and I really appreciate making time for the show this morning.
And I really enjoyed it, and thank you so much for giving me this time, Patty.
My pleasure, Bob. Stay in touch.
Yeah, thanks. Bye-bye.
You're welcome. Bye-bye. All right, let's take a break for the news. Don't go away.
You're listening to a rebroadcast of VOCM Open Line. Have your say by calling 709-273-5211 or 1-888-590-8626 and listen live weekday mornings at 9 a.m.
Welcome back. Let's go to line number 5. Rosalind, you're on the air.
Good morning, Patty.
Morning.
Long time no talk to you.
Welcome back to the show.
Anyhow, I thank you for taking this call. I was just going to leave a message and go on, but anyhow, I've been wanting to get on for a long time, but Tony Wakeham and Pierre Polliott, it just drives me right out of my trees. I have to mute the radio every time they're on, because there's only 3 words comes out of each of them. Well, Tony Wakeham now as bad as Polliott. This all they can say is 3 words. This liberal government. But in the meantime, I said, Polliott, he said it that many times, it got on people's nerves, he even lost his seat. And Tony Wakeham is on there every day and just looking at him. I have to turn it off, to tell you the truth. Anyhow, not only that, I wanted to put this by you because I always had good faith in the COVID vaccination. I had the first 2 vaccinations when they were due, like in so many days or months or whatever. The third one I had I'd say it was a year ago in the fall. I never bothered, I got that one, yes, but I never bothered one this year because I made an appointment and never got it. In the meantime, when I turned 80, and it'll be 2 years in September, I had perfect eye vision. My doctor said, my God, Roz, I never saw anybody at your age with such good eye and all the rest of it. Everything was perfect. From, I'd say about 6 months ago my eyesight started to go weird. I was seeing shadows, nighttime especially, if I went to bed, see these black shadows over my eyes and everything. So anyhow, I was telling, I had another doctor, not with the same doctor, but a doctor's appointment. I was telling her, and she said, well, you better get and see an eye specialist right away or you'll lose your driver's license. Anyhow, I got an appointment, saw the doctor, and I'm wondering if it had something to do with that COVID vaccination, because now I'm hearing all kinds of stories. Like I said, I used to have good faith in it and believed in it, but right now, there's so many bad stories coming out, I'm wondering. Because my eyes, anyhow, I've got to get glasses. I know I'll be 82 in September, and I'm the oldest person in my family used to be 6, and I'm the only one that didn't wear glasses. Not that I'm proud of that or anything like that. I just didn't need glasses. I read perfect. I could see perfect. Anyhow, what do you think?
Well, I don't know if there's any relationship between eyesight and any vaccination, including the COVID vaccination. I don't know, to be honest with you. I do know that the federal government has re-established a $50 million vaccine injury fund, which is something. Now, there always was one, but now it's been restocked to the tune of $50 million. So I'll put that out there. I don't know if there's anything I was more sick of talking about during my term on the show, whether it was Muskrat Falls back in the day or the COVID vaccine. There was just very little in the way of good faith conversations. I don't know what the extent of injuries are, but people who start by telling me that there was no warning of myocarditis or those types of possibilities as a result of the vaccine, all of that stuff just simply wasn't true. I mean, if you just look at the piece of paper they gave you when you went to get your vaccine, it had all those things on it. And what's also interesting to me, and I'll bounce this off you, Rosalind, I'll sit down to watch some TV. And how many commercials are dominated by the big pharmaceutical companies? And every single one, no matter what it's for, they rhyme off a big laundry list of possible complications or possible negative outcomes, like every drug on the face of the earth. I don't know how exaggerated or not some of these stories regarding the COVID vaccine, but I'm not afraid of it.
No, I never was. It's just this last couple of nights on the NTV News, and I watch it there too, and I listen to you every day too. Thank God you're there. And I appreciate every story you got. But in the meantime, that's what they were talking about. Probably now, it never come in my mind, tell you the God's truth. It never come across my mind on top, but I was wondering, how come you can have perfect eyesight, and in a year and a half, you're almost blind?
I really don't know how to answer that.
I don't know either. And,
yeah.
And anyhow, I was in Claremville day before yesterday, I guess. Went up there and saw the eye doctor and everything. She couldn't understand either. Because she said, there's a little bit of, what's that thing they put scratch your eyes? You get the surgeries for all the time?
For cataracts?
Cataract, yeah. She said there's a little bit of cataract there, and there's a little tiny, nothing serious, but I got to wear glasses to see. To see ahead of me and stuff. Yeah,
now this is not meant to be saucy, Rosalind, but could it simply be your age?
Oh, I know that. Well, that's what I was thinking too. It's probably me age. I don't know, by tell you the God's truth. I don't know. But I know, like when I turned 80, I had perfect vision, and now I don't have nothing. I couldn't even see the board, the eye where you look at the board. Couldn't see nothing on there.
Yeah, I used to have absolutely perfect vision. I'm only in my mid-50s, but now I'm googly-eyed from reading all day. I've got reading glasses for the first time in my life for some really small font. Boys, oh boys, I can't make it out. And I used to be able to read like a hawk.
I know. I read I used to spend an hour every single morning reading. I won't tell you because you think I'm crazy. But anyhow, every single morning I spend an hour reading. And I've got reading glasses. I've had reading glasses for years. When we lived in Germany, we had to have an eye test on. My husband and me had to have an eye test on before we could get our license. They put you in this black room with not a glimmer of light in the whole world. Now, anyhow, when I come out of there, that's what they said then. You got perfect vision. But it was after that I started wearing reading glasses. But like in the mornings here, the sun is shining in the window. Even now, I'm sitting there reading. I don't even need to put on reading glasses. I can see. But I guess whatever is wrong with my eyes is something else. I don't know. Anyhow, I'm not. I said the age is probably there, Patty, but.
Yeah, I think that's probably part of why my vision isn't quite as good as it once was.
No, I know, but not as good as it once was, but good once as it ever was. That's what mine is like.
I appreciate your call this morning, Rosalind. Thanks a lot.
I appreciate you taking my call. And anyhow, you have a great day and a great weekend. And thank you for everything you do, Patty. Bye.
Thanks a lot, Rosalind. Appreciate it.
No Lighthouse Festival this year. That's the only thing I can't report to you.
Oh, that's too bad.
Yeah, that's in the Kings Cove one,
Yeah.
No, couldn't round up the, it was hard to get the bands and all the rest of that stuff. So we said we'd just lay low for a year and see. Probably next year.
Let me know.
Anyhow, you'll hear from me again then.
I look forward to it.
Okay, thanks a million, Patty.
Thanks, Rosalind.
God bless.
You too.
And you're proud. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye. All right, let's take a break. Don't go away. Welcome back to the show. Let's go to line number 2. Say good morning to the PC member for Grand Falls, Windsor, Buckins. That's Chris Tibbs. And right now, good morning, Chris. You're on the air.
Hey, good morning, Patty. How are you?
Not too bad. How about you?
Not well. I'm actually pretty upset, so you have to bear with me here for a moment as I try to compose myself. So I'll give you the rundown here real quick, Patty. Dr. Wendy House is a doctor here in Grand Falls, Windsor, and she's one of the doctors here at the cancer clinic. Dr. Wendy House has been here for 10 years. She's born Newfoundland Labrador. Her husband's a nurse practitioner, just the ideal family that we need here in the province. Young doctor, strong, fantastic. On June 1st, 5 weeks ago, she tendered her letter of resignation to this government and LHS. It went out to everybody that you could ever imagine. And I'm going to read a short piece of her letter here, Patty, and it says, "As I hope you can appreciate, this is a huge loss for me, both professionally and financially, and was not made without years of consideration and debate. I have made thousands of patients' connections over the last 10 years and will continue to share tears with my patients when I inform them of this unfortunate outcome. However, I cannot continue with the mediocre level of support and what appears to be a lack of appreciation and respect." Patty, that was 5 weeks ago. Not one bureaucrat, not one person from NLHS, not the Premier, not anybody from the Minister's office, not one person has reached out to Dr. Wendy House. Yet last week, when doctors from St. Clair's, and God love, we don't want to lose them either, tender their letter of resignation, within 24 hours, we have a full press corps. Patty, how does this happen? How does this incompetence happen? Are doctors less important in the rural areas to this government than they are in the urban areas? How can this happen? I don't know if it's deliberate, and the only other explanation besides deliberate is the fact that it's the grossest negligence I've ever seen in my entire life. Not one phone call, Patty. So people ask, all the time, well, what are you guys going to do differently? Well, we've done it differently because this week our leader, Tony Wakeham, came out here for the sole purpose of sitting with Dr. Wendy House and hearing her concerns. And after 45 minutes of tears and a plan moving forward, we left that office, but Wendy House is still in limbo. And Patty, what she's done for our community and the cancer patients, they see over 300 cancer patients a month here. What happens now? Because this clinic is on its last legs, just as our emergency room and just as our hospital is. And if we lose our cancer clinic, Patty, what's that going to do for the people that receive the care and treatment? What's that going to do for the MTAP program when they all have to start traveling and cost taxpayers a ton more money? Where is this coming from? What kind of government do we have that can't call this doctor in 5 weeks?
Yeah, I should be able to get a return call, not only for a doctor, but just about everybody who's a tax-paying voter. I never know exactly how to respond to, does the government only care about inside the overpass versus outside the overpass? I mean, just for instance, and this is not for a debate on this particular issue, because people feel like they feel, and that's just the way the world works. But just look at the city. I mean, 5 internal medicine doctors at St. Clair's resigned en masse. And that's only after 2 others had resigned en masse. So I don't know if there's a real rural-urban divide insofar as resources go, because I can tell you as a resident of this city that we hear these stories right here in the capital, just like we hear from other parts of the province. So I don't know if it's a city, towny thing or inside or outside the overpass, to be honest with you.
And I wouldn't want to make it that way, Patty, but I'm just highlighting the fact that those doctors from St. Clair's, God love them once again, within 24 hours, there was a full press corps of a government that is leaving this young lady in absolute limbo. Patty, listen, if we can't call the doctor in 5 weeks, over a 5-week period from her letter of resignation, what are we doing? That should be the simplest thing that you could ever imagine. And we still have a Premier's office at a cost of $1 million over a term to the taxpayers here in Grand Falls, Windsor. What are they doing? I mean, I've seen, Minister Abbott and and some of the employees from the Premier's office at the Habitat for Humanity announcement yesterday in their hard hats, a nice vote. Great cause, not taking anything away from it. But if the cameras aren't there, can we still do the heavy lifting, Patty? Can we still call these doctors? It's beyond me. And I'll just, real quick, I'll just talk about the nursing class here. We have a nursing class here in Grand Falls, Windsor. I think it's 26 nurses that are about to go into their final year. As far as I know some of them did, probably all of them, have sent in emails requesting jobs here next year when they, and this, I think this was months ago, next year when they graduate. Not even a response. Yet Nova Scotia rolled out the red carpet. Come on up here. We'll fly up here. What do you need? What can we do to get you? Not even a response. There's a breakdown, Patty. There's something fundamentally wrong.
Fair enough. Look, I mean, there's some of these disconnects which I just don't understand. So, of course, not every graduate from any healthcare school can necessarily pick and choose exactly where they want to work. I understand how that goes. Like, if I grew up in St. John's and I'm going to the registered school to be a registered nurse, doesn't mean I get to work at 4 North B. But when we have some 400 vacancies and we hear Nova Scotia coming to town recruiting aggressively our graduates from registered nursing school and otherwise, and then we're seeing offers of, casual or part-time work as opposed to permanent full-time. Some of that might be directly associated with benefits or not. But how can all of these things exist at the same time? We have a bunch of nurses that were given layoff slips while we were starting to rely heavily on travel agency nurses. So I just don't understand it. Is it simply because there's a disconnect inside the department? Because if it's a strategy, then it's a weird one because it didn't work. And so if it doesn't work, like everything else in this world, if it doesn't work, you go back to the drawing board. So all of these things that are so absolutely in contradiction to each other, it's hard to unravel it sometimes.
It is, Patty, and I'll listen, boys, I just don't understand. I'm at a loss for words right now. Dr. Wendy House and her husband are extremely valuable to this community, and in 5 weeks, if this government cannot get off their arse and send them one email, one phone call, what are they doing? I mean, Patty, 5 minutes for a phone call possibly could have saved this doctor for us, but she's absolutely out now. She doesn't. She's so fed up with it, it's not even funny. And Patty, I've watched this doctor grow. I've stood next to her when she's been with patients. I watched her cry. I've watched her work. My God, I wish we had a province full of Wendy Houses. And for this government to let her go by the wayside, they should be ashamed of themselves, absolutely ashamed of themselves. And so many people in my community now are going to be hurting because of it. And I don't know what else to say, Patty, other than, you know what? If this is one of those 11th hour right before an election, come on in, swoop in and be the hero, guys, get your act together. Start taking care of the people of the province, for God's sakes, and take care of people like Wendy House that are doing her best for the people of the province as well.
I appreciate the time. Thanks for doing it.
Thanks. And Patty, I just want to say to all the healthcare workers out there, boys, I've stood next to you. I've watched you work, and just please keep the faith a little bit longer. I promise you, because Patty, when we take this government, we are going to make the proper changes that are going to work. It's going to take some time, don't get me wrong, but I guarantee you the first thing we're going to do, you wouldn't believe what you can learn just by talking to people and listening to the people on the ground. Thank you very much for your time.
And this is offered as a respectful comment. When the writ is dropped for the current government, for opposition politicians, opposition parties, we're going to get down to the brass tacks of solutions. Because I understand the critically important role that is the official opposition and or all opposition parties. But what's sometimes missing inside some of these policy concerns is forecasted or predicted solutions. So that's just for you and your colleagues in the PC caucus, for Mr. Dinnan, whoever runs for the NDP, for Liberal candidates, who knows who that will be in the future. When we talk policy, we want solutions. We want answers. Criticism is a starting point, but it can't be the ending point. We want to know what people are going to do, not what they think is wrong.
Couldn't agree more, Patty. Let's drop that writ and let's get some change happening.
Appreciate the time.
Thank you, sir. Have a good day.
You too. Bye-bye. Chris Tibbs, PC member for Grand Falls, Windsor, Buckins. All right, we're just right up against the news. So Diane and Clayton, appreciate your patience. You stay right there for after the newscast. Let's check in on the Twitter box. We're VOCM Open Line, you know what to do. Email address is openline@vocm.com. And this is just a friendly hope, is that I appreciate the emails. Some of them are bonkers, but I do appreciate getting the notes. Maybe just consider also maybe participating live on the air. I know some people think that, they don't feel comfortable doing it or what have you, but I think if you try it, you might get hooked. like all the other good things in this world. Let's take a break for the news. When we come back, Diane wants to talk about doctor shortages, of which that is very real in this province and across the country. Clayton's also there to talk about the cost of living for seniors. On that front, we need to change our approach to eligibility thresholds. Like, for instance, with the guaranteed income supplement. What was $22,000 5 years ago is not $22,000 worth of purchasing power today. Those two and then you right after this.
The Tim Powers Show. Join the conversation weekday afternoons at 4 p.m. on your VOCM.
Welcome back to the show. Let's go to line number 3. Diane, you're on the air.
Yes, good morning, Patty.
Morning to you.
The last gentleman from Central, he certainly deserves praise and a pat on the back for what he said, because it's absolutely true. Our government should be ashamed. And Pat Parfrey, he's been around for many, many years, and maybe it's time he got out. Maybe we need some new blood. But I found out last week that I no longer have a doctor. And it was a shock, to say the least, because I had no idea. There's no letters sent out or anything like that. And I hadn't been to the doctor since last November, thank goodness. I don't have to go very often, and I'm grateful for that. But last week I found myself in need of a doctor. So when I called, the lady said, well, at first I couldn't get an answer for about a day. So then I decided, okay, well, I'll leave a message. So the next morning, the secretary called, and she said, I spoke to the doctor about your concern, and she said, the doctor said, maybe you should go to Emerge. And I was like, oh. So she said, she's closing her practice. And I said, what? And she said, yes. She said, you didn't know. And I said, well, how would I know? And she said, well, she's been telling her patients since January. Well, I hadn't seen her since January, so I had no idea. And I said, very good. Okay, well, what could I do then? So I called the nurse practitioner's office on Friday, and I had an appointment this Wednesday morning, past. So I went in, and I got there early, and she was pleasant, and she took me in early. So she said, she said, we'll do some blood work and urinalysis. And I said, sure. And she said, you can have your rec and go wherever. Or she said, we can do it here. And I said, well, I'm here now. I might as well get it done. She said, okay, fine. So, and she said, I'll schedule you for an ultrasound. I said, okay, that's good. And she said, and come back next Wednesday for another procedure. And I said, okay, fine. So I had the blood work and urinalysis done right there. And my appointment was for 9, but I got in early. And I was back in Calabruce by 20 to 10. And I had an appointment, blood work, urinalysis, set up for ultrasound, scheduled for an appointment this Wednesday in less than 20 minutes. So, I was wondering, how come people can't go to a doctor and get that done? Like, if I had to take my rec and go to make an appointment to Major's Path, that would have taken a few days, and then the thing would have had to go back to the doctor, the report, and then there's more days or weeks. And the nurse practitioner told me, she said, I'll call you Monday with your results. I said, cool. I was so grateful, and it was so fast. Yes, I had to pay for it, but we're paying for health care anyway, but we're not getting it. I hate it when people say, oh, well, we get our health care free. We don't get our health care free. We're paying through the nose for health care, but we're not getting it. And, these nurse practitioners, they know what they're doing. And I think that, we should take more advantage. I've been recommending nurse practitioners to people for a long time, even though I haven't had to go there myself until recently. But it would that whole experience was fabulous. I have to say, they deserve a pat on the back as well. So I just wanted to voice my opinion about that.
Yeah, and just a summary point for me is, At some point here, we're either going to have to get a very good reason as to why nurse practitioners can't hang out their own shingle and bill MCP directly, or they're going to make it happen. Because the amount of the volume of calls and emails and conversations I have about healthcare and limited access to primary care, there is one thing we can do to make it better. Let nurse practitioners do what they want to do and the role that they're trained to do without billing people directly. It just doesn't make any sense why we don't do that. The turnaround can be quick. The difference between training and the roles can be performed by doctors for the most part. I'm not talking about surgery and the like. Nurse practitioners play a critical role, as do licensed practical nurses and registered nurses and doctors and everybody else. But that nurse practitioner gap here is really hard to understand.
And sometimes, when you're having tests done, time is critical. I mean, cancer patients know this. Like, time is critical. You can't. Like, my sister had breast cancer. Now she's waiting to get a hip replacement. When she called her doctor back in April, early April, she can't get an appointment till the middle of August. And this is a former cancer patient and major hip problems and can't get an appointment in 4 months. Like, something wrong.
Yeah, it's the furthest thing from ideal. And you mentioned even just to schedule some blood work. I had to book an appointment, and I tried on Monday, and the first opportunity I could get, now this was just at Major's Path, and I tried St. Clair's as well, but at Major's Path, the first one I could get was on the 17th of July.
Yeah.
So not a very quick turnaround.
Well, my brother's doctor told him, because my brother said, well, could he get his blood work done there? No, he said, we don't get paid to do that. He said, I'm not doing that. It takes 5 minutes. 5 minutes. That's it. Done. Like, what is the big deal? Honestly, I don't know. It's certainly not like it was years ago. I mean, I could walk out the road here any day of the week or night and go in and sit down and wait to see the doctor. But we don't expect doctors to work 5 days and 5 nights a week and half a Saturday. Like, that's not even reasonable. But work 5 days a week anyway, like from 8 to 4 or 8 to 3, and then do your bit of paperwork. Like, we don't expect people to work all those ridiculous hours. But people now, like some of the doctors, are only working 3 days a week. So, what do you do? And Emerge says go see your family doctor, and your family doctor says go to Emerge. I mean, people are in limbo. It's terrible.
I agree with you. Diane, anything else you want to say before I take another call this morning?
No, my love, that's perfect. I appreciate your time.
I appreciate yours. Good luck.
Okay. Take care.
You too, Diane. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Let's keep rolling here. Let's go to line number 1. Clayton, you're on the air.
Yes. I was sitting there last evening. I got on the phone and I called my account to see if my rent come out with Western Health. It came out. It was supposed to be $373. It came out $435, $62 more. Now that's $62 more a month they're taking. That's $740 a year. Where am I getting the money at?
I don't know.
I'm on a fixed income.
So
And the government's doing nothing. You can call all their offices, every one of their offices, and nobody answers. Yeah, Minister of Health office, they answer the phone. They're good. But the Premier's office, you can't get nobody to answer the phone there. And you got to keep after them, try to get them to call you back.
Okay, just a quick question. Your rent came... Just hold on, Clayton. Your rent came out to pay rent to who? Like...
Western Health.
Oh, to pay rent to Western Health. Okay.
Yeah. It's supposed to be $373. That's $462. I can't get out to nobody. You call them, and they won't answer their phones. I called Kellyanne Welch. With Elsie, what? Can't get no answer there. She just sits there, plays with her pencil, and looks at the phone ringing.
Just so I know.
No one answer.
So how do you pay rent to a health authority? Where do you live?
Out of your account. It takes it right out of your account.
Yeah, I know that part, but like, where do you live that Western Health owns and operates the property, and you pay rent to them?
The cottages here in Cornerbrook.
Okay.
And here's the people there in the cottages fighting to get something done with the cottages. The managers and the workers, we can't do nothing. We got no money. Government won't give us no money. We got no money to do nothing with. So they can't do nothing here because our government won't give them no money. And here's they're taking it from us left and right. We're seniors, getting our pension from federal, and the provincial government's in there stealing it, says they can steal it. Because they're not trying to help us. I got to pay $200 towards me home support worker. I'm physically disabled. I got 2 stents in, COVDS. I got arthritis in one hip, arthritis in the other knee, and in the back. Can't do nothing. And my caregivers went up from 180 to 200. That's another $240 a year. On top of the $740. My rent going up. That's over $1,000. I can't afford it. And nobody else, nobody answering phones. And Jerry Burns over in another country for recruiting foreigners, bringing them back. We're tired of paying for foreigners. We're paying for foreigners all the time. They're getting everything. Tell them to give it up. You got to give it up. Or start looking after his own. We got to remember, Jerry Burns, he hasn't come here. He hasn't come here around seniors to see what they need or nothing. Can't get in there. He's more interested in bringing in the foreigners, helping the foreigners, and he's helping his own people.
I'm not sure about that,
and
but
it's not right. We're looking to try to get out. I can't get out, and I can't afford another $62 a month. Somebody's got to answer phones. The Liberal government won't answer phones. We got a Liberal government in there that don't care. They can find money to give themselves a $32,000 raise. And oh yeah, not too long ago back, they got $71.3 million to help seniors. Where did it all go to? Nobody got no help there. No help for the management there to do the work in the cottages, get the work in the cottages. Where'd the money go? What did they do? Take that and use for the help the foreigners too? They said, we're not getting no help. It's time for that Liberal government to wake up. And like Buddy said, they should be ashamed what they're doing. And he's right. I agree with what he said. They should be ashamed.
fair enough, Clayton. Anything else this morning?
No, that's about it. But they got to get somebody answering the phones and get to answer the phones. That's what you got them there for.
That's why they have phones. That's fair ball. Yeah, it's not only for calling out, it's for answering as well.
Yeah. Yeah, it is. I mean, between your house, you call there, you get one ring, you get the answer machine. And you can't get nobody. Minister Bell's office again. You get the lady, they're good. Two little women there, they answers. I must say, I got to get them because they answers. And Jerry Burns' office in St. John's answers. Now, Susie over there, okay. Don't get her. She'll call you back, though. She have a call back, I want to say that. So I just got to keep calling and keep pleading with her.
I suppose that's all you can do. I appreciate the time you've had. I have to get to my final break of the morning and the week, Clayton. Good luck to you.
Yeah, thanks.
You're welcome. Bye-bye.
Bye.
All right, let's take that final break. Don't go away. Welcome back. Let's go to line number 3. Daryl, you're on the air.
Oh, hi, Paddy. How you doing today?
Not too bad. How about you?
Oh, doing good. Thank you very much. Paddy, what I'm calling about, I listened to a gentleman call on your show recently. He's talking about motor vehicle registration, and I think how you paid, keep on paying the same sale tax over and over on the same vehicle. You might have been on your show there a few days ago, I think.
Yeah, I remember the call.
Yeah, and that prompted me to call as well because I looked at now recently I had to renew all my vehicles, registration, whatever, and the same scenario. Why do you keep paying every year, paying a fee to register your vehicle when it's already registered? In Ontario, you only do it once and that's it, and you keep your plates. So when I heard him listening to him, it made sense, and so I decided to call in on that as well because if I'm registering my vehicle every year, why am I registering every year if I still got the same vehicle? So I already paid for it once. You shouldn't have to keep paying for the same thing over and over unless you buy a different vehicle. That's totally different altogether. But that's something for something to think about.
It's an interesting point. They handle it differently in different provinces. For the life of me, I don't understand why we haven't made the move to keeping your own plate. You get a plate when you get your first vehicle, and that's your plate forevermore.
Yeah, exactly, right. So that prompted me when I listened to that gentleman. So I had to register a couple of vehicles again, and so I'm paying I'm paying on the same thing year and year when I already bought it and paid registration. But you're paying on the registration again every year upon renewal. So something wrong with that picture. I think they should take a good hard look at it. Yes, I know they want money to collect money going to government coffers to waste, I guess. So a good way of putting it. But I think that's something should be looked at. And like you said, your license plate is your license plate as well, right? So I'm not sure about all other provinces, but Ontario, you only paid registration once, and then that's it. So something that, in my opinion, I'd like to be able to get someone in that department, the minister, whoever it is, like come on your show and address this issue.
Yeah, I can't speak for anybody in government, but basically, the answers will be something along the lines of, well, that's the way it's always been, and it's an annual re-registration process, And you're 100% right. Once I register my vehicle once, unless I change vehicles, I need to register it to have updated information with the Department of Motor Vehicle, then that's a fair question. Why am I paying it again? I hadn't really given it a whole lot of thought, but now I suppose that's all I'll think about all day.
Yeah, and like I said, that jogged me when I done it recently. And then I heard that gentleman. I said, I got to call him and address this part. And they said, well, that's what we always done. But, if we keep going back in the past, we keep doing the same thing over and over, and you keep going back in the past, that's how we always done it, then you never modernize and you never advance to the future as well. So that's a terrible mentality on the government's part if that's the case, right? But it'd be nice to get someone on the show to, I know you can't speak on no one's behalf, whoever the minister is, that department, it'd be nice to get them on the show and address this issue.
Yeah, I'd also like to know what people are thinking inside the ranks of the government about all the things we're not allowed to see in the Rothschild report and what the future motor vehicle looks like. Because that's one of the first recommendations made by Moya Green, for instance. It was to divest our oil assets, our equity stake, to divest of the NLC, to divest of Bull Arm, to divest our interest at motor vehicle and let it be run by a private entity. Whether or not people think that's a good idea, I'll leave it up to the individual. Anything else you want to say this morning while we have you, Daryl?
No, that should suffice, but you just made some good points there as well. It'd be nice, I think, that the report, that report was paid by the taxpayers, and I think taxpayers got a right to, should be shown that report rather than being hidden and confidential. And I heard the excuse for other reasons, but we are the taxpayers, we pay for that report, we got a right to know what's in those reports.
Well, and interestingly, there's actually a cabinet minister that has the final word coming up here this morning. And just between me and you and the gatepost is, I paid for it. You paid for it. It's interesting to be told you can't see something that I actually physically paid for. Right? I might not put my hand in my pocket, but I did it when I paid my taxes. Appreciate the time, Daryl. Off to the last caller I go.
Okay, great. Again, thanks, Paddy, for your time, and all the best to you and your listening audience, and have a great weekend. And I got some other issues. I'll call it again another time. There's always some other points you got to be addressed.
Appreciate yours, Daryl. Thanks a lot.
All right. Thank you.
You're welcome. Bye-bye. Final word this morning goes to line number 2, the Liberal member for Harbour Grace, Port de Grave. That's Pam Parsons. Good morning, Minister Parsons. You're on the air.
Good morning, Patty, and thank you for taking my call. I just wanted to get on here and just to put some awareness out to residents in my area, in particular in the Bay Roberts area, in the community of Badcock Boulevard and Cleary subdivision. There has been a bear sighting in Bay Roberts, actually in the yard between 40 and 50 Badcock Boulevard. Actually, this bear apparently came into someone's backyard. Now, that said, I've been in touch with Forestry and Wildlife, and officials have confirmed for me that officials are actually traveling to the location to set a trap. And they also provided a phone number if anybody should see a bear. It's a 24-hour line they can call, and that number is 709-685-7273. And they've also told me that they're getting more and more calls of sightings of bears along the Avalon Peninsula in the area of the old track, Denny's Pond, Burgess Junction, and even in Holyrood. So, be careful, everyone, especially, we have to watch out for our own safety, the safety of our pets and our children, because apparently, these bears are getting closer and closer to our communities, and this is very, very close to home in Bay Roberts this morning.
I wish we had more time to talk about other issues, but fair warning that there are bears in the area, so watch your bobber. I appreciate this. Thank you, Minister.
Okay, thank you. Take good care.
You too. Bye-bye. Yeah, I wish we had more time to dig into other stuff. All right, good show today. Good shows all week. Big thanks to all hands who support the program. And we will indeed pick up this conversation again on Monday morning, right here on VOCM and Big Land FM's Open Line. On behalf of the producer, David Williams, I'm your host, Paddy Daly. Have yourself a safe, fun, happy weekend. Talk Monday. Bye-bye.